So yesterday I'm driving my girls to school, and I play this game sometimes where I sing a song and see if they know it. Of course, they hate when I play this game, but I go, ba 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 ba. And Lennon's already like, all right, I know what that is. I said, what? She goes, Allan Holdsworth, City Nights. Now, for those of you that may not know that tune, that's this. That's the only thing that she needed to hear to know what the song was. So then I come back to the studio, and John and Tom are here. And I was like, I'm going to play you guys something. Tell me if you know who the composer is. So then I played this. So I figured that they're going to jump in anytime and say what it is. But I let it keep playing, and they just sat there for a second. Finally, after about 30 seconds, Tom meekly says, Mozart? I said, no. And then John looks at me and he goes, with a question mark, Bach? And I said, yes. That's the keyboard concerto in D minor. I said, when did Bach live? Like, what are his dates? You guys know exactly when it was? And they... I don't know, 1700s. I'm like, yeah, he kind of lived in the 1700s. He was born in 1685 and died in 1750. That marks an era, the Baroque era. I mean, the Baroque era is really from about 1600 to 1750, but 1750 is definitely when it cuts off. Now, why are eras in music important? Why is anything historically important in music? I could be doing the same thing about jazz and maybe start with swing music and bebop and talk about the different figures at it, but we'll go back with classical music since most music rules in Western music are based on the things that Bach did in his lifetime, the pieces that he composed. There are things that I think that people should know, these style periods, at least a few of them, and maybe some of the composers associated with them. And why do I think that? It probably goes back to the time when I did my first college audition. I was humiliated by the fact that I didn't know that I needed to learn a piece from 3 different style periods on classical guitar. Now that could be the Renaissance, the Baroque, the Classical era. It could be the Baroque, the Classical, the Romantic era. It could be the Romantic 20th century and Classical era. Just any 3. But what did I do? I played 3 pieces from the Baroque era. Because of that, I didn't get into college. And so when I eventually did re-audition and get into college, it was really important to me to know about these different eras, at least of classical music, and then, of course, of jazz, and then of popular music, of all the different eras of popular music. It's important to know these things, to me, anyways, at least to have some historical kind of understanding of how music evolved. And if you just took 3 important classical composers and knew a little bit about them, a few of their pieces, doesn't necessarily matter that you know that the Renaissance era is basically from 1400 to 1600, and the Baroque era is from 1600 to 1750, and the Classical era is from 1750 to 1820, and the Romantic era is from 1820 to 1900, and the 20th century is obviously from 1900 to 2000, right? The 20th century. You don't have to know those dates, but if you just took a few important composers, how about Bach, Mozart, and Beethoven? So I asked one of my friends earlier today, I said, who was born first, Bach, Mozart, or Beethoven? He said, Mozart. And I said, no. And I said, Bach was born first. Who came next? He said, Beethoven? I said, no, Mozart. They don't really overlap. Obviously, Mozart and Beethoven overlap. Not obviously, but Mozart and Beethoven overlap. But Bach, 1685 to 1750. Then Mozart was born 6 years after Bach died, 1756, and he died in 1791. Beethoven was born in 1770, so he overlaps with Mozart. He died in 1827. Why is it important to know these 3 composers? Because they're perfect examples of each style period. Bach was a Baroque composer, perfect example of the Baroque era. Mozart was a classical era composer, and Beethoven really started as a classical era composer, but he brought in the Romantic era, That's why these 3 figures are so important. So I was thinking, like, what is a good Bach piece to play? I could play one of the cello suites. I could play something from the Johannes Passion or the St. Matthew Passion. I could play something from the Bach Mass in B minor, Toccata and Fugue. I could play anything from the Well-Tempered Clavier. But I thought I'd play this piece. It's BWV 106. This is the Bach Works catalog. So they cataloged all his pieces. They gave each of them a number. This is a very early piece. It's from like 1705, 1707, sometime really early. It's one of the earliest Bach pieces that I know, and I just happened to have listened to it this morning. I'm going to play it for you. That was the intro. Wow. Stunning. Wow. Oh. Beautiful pedal point. And there it is. I mean, what else do you need to say? The whole intro to this video was actually just an excuse for me to play this piece and get people to kind of invested in the story here. But is that beautiful or what? I mean, that just blew me away. I've heard it before, but it's like, wow, that's a cantata, a Bach cantata. It's arranged for piano for 4 hands with 2 players. That is beautiful. I mean, that's really amazing. Blows my mind. I thought you guys would enjoy it. I like to bring you some of these videos like this where I can kind of get you in and then hit you with some classical music that you might not be exposed to. Leave a comment. Love to know your thoughts. Hit subscribe. Thanks for watching.